Gaza's largest hospital lies in ruins after Israeli forces end a two-week raid. Israel says it killed hundreds of Hamas fighters within the medical centre. Witnesses say hundreds of civilians died.
The house was hit by an F-16. God protected them and they were able to leave the house, only to be hit by a strike from the drones.
Meanwhile, in Damascus, the Iranian consulate is bombed. Iran blames Israel and says it will retaliate. Also tonight, Arrest Me. J.K. Rowling challenges Scotland's new hate crime law. The government rolls out more free childcare, but critics say there aren't enough places. And Ed Sheeran's bad habit, leaving early and missing his beloved Ipswich, move one step closer to promotion.
This is ITV News with Yasmin Bottleby.
Good evening. A Shifa hospital was once the heart of Gaza's health system. Over the last 2 weeks, it became a battlefield, and now it lies in ruins. Today, the Israeli military pulled out of the site, saying it had won a major victory, killing or capturing hundreds of terrorists based there. Hamas denies using the medical facility and says that hundreds of civilians, including doctors, have been killed by Israeli forces. Meanwhile, Israel is being blamed for a deadly airstrike on the Iranian consulate in Damascus. More on that in a moment, but first here's Sam Holder on the devastation at a Shifa hospital.
This was once a hospital. Al-Shifa now looks more like a graveyard. It was the largest and most advanced medical complex in Gaza. But for the past 2 weeks, it saw operations of a very different kind. The IDF raid is now over. It says it killed 200 militants and arrested hundreds more from Hamas and its allies, who they accuse of using the hospital as a base. Hamas claims hundreds of civilians were killed, including doctors and those living in nearby buildings which were bombed. This man says he lost 7 of his extended family.
The house was hit by an F-16. God protected them and they were able to leave the house, only to be hit by a strike from the drones.
The Israeli government described the raid as the gold standard for urban warfare and claimed it would be studied at Sandhurst in the future. It is now planning an incursion into Rafah.
The IDF is prepared for the evacuation of the civilian population and for the provision of humanitarian assistance. We will enter Rafah and we will eliminate the Hamas battalions there.
Prime Minister Netanyahu is now out of hospital himself following a hernia operation, but he's facing mounting opposition in Israel. The largest protest yet continuing today over his failure to agree a hostage release deal. Back in Gaza, away from the rubble that was Al-Shifa Hospital, a glimmer of good news on the horizon. The first of 3 ships from Cyprus, carrying more than 1 million meals worth of food, finally spotted off the coast. Sam Holder, ITV News.
Well, now to tonight's other big development in the Middle East, the bombing of the Iranian consulate in Damascus in Syria, killing several people, including a top Iranian general. Ian Woods is here to talk more about this. And Ian, Israel hasn't commented on this, but I assume that pretty much everyone assumes it was them.
Well, Israel has been blamed. Israel, as usual, hasn't commented, but Israel has carried out hundreds of missile strikes inside Syria in recent years. The reason that this one is noteworthy is because of the location and the identity of the man who was targeted and killed. The building, which was, as you can see, completely flattened by the blast, was right next to Iran's embassy in Damascus. The consular building was where the Iranian ambassador lived. Those responsible for the attack will be pleased at its accuracy. 7 Iranians were killed, among them Mohammad Reza Zadeh. He was a senior general in the Quds Force, the overseas branch of Iran's Revolutionary Guard. He will have had very close links with Hezbollah in Lebanon over many years, and in recent months there's been an upsurge in rocket attacks from them into northern Israel. The Israelis have, of course, retaliated with strikes across the border, but now appears to have decided to escalate this. Iran has promised a response, And so far, none of these skirmishes have triggered a wider regional conflict. But it shows once again that Israel is fighting on multiple fronts, and just because it's heavily engaged in Gaza doesn't mean to say that it's taken its eye off the ball elsewhere in the region.
Oh, OK. Ian, thank you. Now, the Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling has challenged Scottish police to arrest her after a new hate crime law came into effect, which she says is wide open to abuse. The legislation creates a new crime of stirring up hatred relating to age, disability, religion or sexual orientation. Ms. Rowling expressed her concern that the new law might be used to try to silence people with legitimate views. Laura Alderman has more.
Deemed a hate crime.
It remains one of the most contentious pieces of legislation ever passed by the Scottish Parliament.
If you witness a hate crime, report it.
Holyrood's new Hate Crime Act comes into force today, creating a new offence of stirring up hatred against certain groups, including age, disability, religion and transgender identity.
I'm very proud of the Hate Crime Act. We have seen, I'm afraid, not just in the UK and of course Scotland, but right across many parts of the world, this kind of rising tide of hatred against people because of their protected characteristics.
Some feminist groups, however, say there's a lack of protection in the new law for women, including Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling, who in a post on X today dared the police to come and arrest her if her gender-critical views were now against the law.
We have real concerns about the implications on free speech. A lot of legal commentators are saying it's all going to be fine when things come to trial, that there'll be a high threshold to prove criminality, which may be the case. But the problem is that we know there are being spurious and vexatious complaints already.
Police Scotland has committed to investigating every single hate complaint it receives, but policing bodies say that could make officers' workloads unmanageable.
The legislation is here, however, at no time was there extra finance put in place or extra police officers put in place to deal with this. The training they've had so far has been a 2-hour online package, and that's all they've had.
It's been more than 3 years since the bill was passed at Holyrood, but the debate and controversy surrounding it refuses to die down. Laura Alderman, ITV News.
The government's thought to be facing a revolt from Conservative MPs over plans to crack down on rough sleeping in England and Wales. More than 40 MPs could rebel against the legislation, fearing it would criminalise homelessness. Our political correspondent Tom Sheldrick is at Westminster for us tonight. And Tom, this sounds like a fight the government could do without, really, in an election year.
Yes, they'll want to avoid another display of disunity and try not to fall out with more MPs in what is already a pretty discontented Conservative party. But there are clear disagreements over proposals within the criminal justice bill. It could see rough sleepers fined up to £2,500 or even jailed if they're deemed to be a nuisance to other people. There are concerns that could extend to anyone judged as having an excessive smell. A number of Tory MPs, including the former party leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, have signed amendments to the legislation to try to ensure homelessness isn't criminalised. The government have told us tonight that they are focused on supporting people to get off the streets while allowing councils and the police to address behaviour that can make the public feel unsafe, such as begging at cash points. It's thought that ministers are now negotiating with rebels to try to avoid this becoming another flashpoint when MPs return here after their Easter break.
Tom, thank you. From today, working parents of 2-year-olds can claim up to 15 hours of free childcare every week. It's the first stage in what the government is calling the biggest ever expansion in free childcare provision. Labour, though, has described it as a pledge without a plan that could crash the whole system. It says parents are already struggling to access the limited childcare places available. Olivia Guthrie reports.
What does the sheep say? Working parents face a huge uphill battle. A lack of childcare places, long waiting lists and sky-high fees.
I'm paying $2,500 a month for 2 kids that go from 9 till 4. And that's not even a full working day.
So we're paying more than our mortgage, I think, so probably just under £4,000.
It's a bit like paying for private schooling, really.
The government's today launching what it calls the biggest ever expansion in childcare provision. Working parents in England can now claim 15 hours of free childcare a week for 2-year-olds. This will be extended to babies aged 9 months and older from September. And a year later, that'll be raised to 30 hours a week.
This hopefully takes away that sort of choice between having a career and having a family, and I want that working women to have that choice.
Childcare costs on average £15,000 a year for a full-time place. That means that parents are still paying around £13,000 a year for a childcare place. So although we're very pleased to see that there are savings, they really aren't going to be enough.
Critics of the government say chronic underfunding has led to a shortage of childcare places and a problem recruiting and retaining staff. The government insists the sector will be able to cope with demand. But Labour says this is a pledge without a plan and accused the Tories of creating childcare chaos.
It's a total mess, and if Labour wins that next election, we will need to make sure that we are delivering the places that parents desperately need.
Tens of thousands of parents are expected to seek childcare places in the coming weeks. The government's hoping getting parents back to work will be a boost for them and a boost for the economy. Olivia Guthrie, ITV News.
More than 250 patients a week may have died in England last year due to very long waits in A&E. Calculations by the Royal College of Emergency Medicine found there was one excess death for every 72 patients that spent 8 to 12 hours in A&E. And more than 5,000 migrants crossed the Channel in small boats in the first 3 months of the year. The final tally for January through to March was 5,435, a record. Finally to football, and there was drama tonight in the race to be promoted to the Premier League next season. Pop superstar Ed Sheeran was in the crowd to watch the club he sponsors play a tense match against Southampton. But he left early with the score at 2-2 and he missed this sensational ending.
As does Leif Davis. And he stepped goal in!
Jeremy Sarmiento scoring a winning goal in the last minute of a stoppage time as Ipswich came from a goal behind to win 3-2 and go top of the Championship less than a year after being promoted from League One. And that's it. The weather forecast is next. But from all of us here, thank you for watching. Good night.